It's June. This is the June 18th meeting of the Rowley Conservation Commission. This meeting is hereby called to order under authority of the Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Town of Rowley Wetlands Protection Bylaw, and the Stormwater Management and Erosion Control Bylaw. Notice is given that both a video and audio recording will be made of this meeting. The agent will now call the roll for attendance.
Thank you. Dan Shinnick.
Here.
Sam Strife.
Here.
Robert Garner.
Here.
Judy Keys.
Here.
Howard Vogel is absent. Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum present.
All right, so we'll jump right into it with payroll and or vendor bills.
Thank you for your consideration. I do have requests for authorization of the payroll. And if this could be passed to Dan, this is for our hours. Okay, then I have a request, reimbursement of some office expenses as well as a cell phone allowance. Send that to the chairman. That's the backup invoice backups. And this is reimbursement for the ordering of the new nameplates for chairman and vice chair. This is the backup invoice for that. That's for Dan to sign. And this is reimbursement for postage expense for mailing permits out from the notice of intent monies under the Wetlands Protection Act. Also the backup invoices, receipts, excuse me.
Does that conclude?
And on an administrative note, since this is our last meeting in FY19, I'm proud to announce that we have 50 cents left in our expense line.
Nice. You are going to be my accountant, Brent. That's congratulations. That's perfect. All right, if that concludes payroll and vendor bills, we'll move to the minutes of May 28th, 2019. Everybody get those minutes electronically and have a chance to review them. Any amendments or revisions to request? Then do I hear a motion to accept those minutes?
Now, there was the amendment, the
As
change.
amended.
As amended, yes, that was the amendment.
I move to accept them as amended.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, those are good.
Unanimous. Who seconded that? Thank you.
And so that will, we're going to move past the October 26 minutes, as those are not yet
They're not ready.
ready, and get into the emergency certificate at 600 Newbury Port Turnpike, Jamie Stanley. This was, if I remember correctly, a flooding due to some beaver damage.
Well, 2 beaver dams on the Mill River. 600 Newburyport Turnpike happens to be on one of the oxbows where the Mill River comes relatively close to the Newburyport Turnpike. The Board of Health certified that flooding on the property was posing a threat to the functioning of their septic system as well as their drinking water well that services the residents. So this is solely for just, this has already been issued, so they could begin the work of breaching the dam and also trapping the beavers to alleviate the flood. So this is just for the Commission's review and certification.
Okay. So do we need to...
Should have a motion as such to...
So the chair would call for a motion to certify the emergency certificate.
So moved.
Do I hear a second? Moved and seconded, all in favor? Aye.
Thank you. That's for all signatures.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And so that will bring us to another emergency certificate, this one at 532 Weathersfield Street, Deborah Rossi by Lucia Herrick Realty Trust. Similar situation?
This was 548 Weathersfield Street, Lucia Herrick Realty Trust, where they have the historic farm crossing of the Mill River.
Yeah.
And they wish to do the pile driving tests, but the southern side of the farm road was submerged underwater because of beaver activity. The dam's located on Deborah Rossi's property, so they needed to get Miss Rossi's permission. And she also wanted to have an indemnification agreement put in place, so anyone she allowed on her property to do work, as in breaching the dam, she would not incur any liability. It took a little while to put that in place, but both parties have been cooperating, and the permit was issued back on June 12th, and they've already accomplished dropping the water level a sufficient amount to expose the farm road to be in a mostly dry condition, although it briefly got moisturized again with the recent rainstorm, but the water level's going back down. So maybe I should just for educational purposes a little bit, when the commission issues a permit for breaching, this isn't simply just allowing a hole of any type of size and depth to be opened in the dam. It needs to be done in a controlled, methodical manner so that you don't cause downstream damage by the sudden release of water. So in this particular instance, the special conditions read as such. The dam breaching must occur in phases, is restricted to hand tools only, and should be done before 10 a.m. each day. The first day, the two breaches may be no larger than 6 feet wide by 6 inches deep on each end of the dam. The third day, the depth may be increased by 6 inches to a foot deep. And the sixth day, another 6 inches if needed to expose upstream farm road crossing. The goal of the breaching will be to drop the water level to expose and dry the farm crossing approaches. Breaching will be conducted in a controlled manner to minimize downstream flooding, to prevent erosion and sediment transport, and avoid rapid wetland change. So the 10 a.m. time period to accomplish that is a recommendation from Fish and Wildlife, because beavers tend not to maintain and be active on the dam during bright daylight hours. So that gives you a maximum amount of daylight and therefore a maximum amount of time for water to be relieved going through the dam before the beavers may, their attention may be drawn to the breach of which they will try to plug. So I'm told that I believe they only had to do the first 2 6-inch breaches. And again, because of a site visit, it was the reason the particular ends of the dam were specified was because those happened to be the ends of the dam that already were seeing some water flow. Beavers never have a totally watertight dam, so there's always places where water is moving through the dam anyway. And those spots were chosen just because they already were showing water flow, and therefore it was hoped that the beavers wouldn't necessarily be attracted instantaneously to it.
No, does this also permit to trapping the way the other?
Well, that a trapping permit is attained separately in conjunction to this, but issued by the Board of Health. So the request here is for the commission to certify this
the
issue.
emergency certificate. Okay. Then the chair calls for a motion to certify the emergency certificate at 532 Weathersfield Street. Do I hear such a motion?
So moved.
Moved. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
It's unanimous. So
I can attest to how much water was going over that road. Stop. Oh, wow.
Okay, that'll bring us to our next item, which is the acceptance of a donation of 23.9 acres of land off Kathleen Circle from Gateway 2 Trust of 1997 and forwarding to the Board of Selectmen with recommendation. Brent?
So this gift of land was initiated by Gateway Realty Trust, Mr. John Coughlin, one of the trustees. There was an article on the town's agenda that requested zoning change that would impact part of his land holdings that are adjacent to the Forest Ridge Drive development, which he's been developing for over 15 years, I believe, as a light industrial commercial area. Part of Part of his request to the town was also the generous offer of these 23.9 acres, which are contiguous and abut the Hunsley Hills Conservation Area and consist of steeply sloped, mature forested woodlands, which would be problematic if they saw development, as well as this also provides screening to the residents who already have homes on Kathleen Circle. Town Council and I have reviewed and requested some changes to increase the language that ensures protection of this open space property, and therefore I would recommend, if the Commission would so choose, to move to accept and sign the deed and forward it on to the Selectmen with a recommendation for their signatures.
This amount of land was, I think, almost twice as large as the land that was being proposed to switch the zoning, switch the zones, I believe. So it seems like you said, a very generous gift to the town, and
yeah, 9.7 acres.
yeah, right, so more than twice.
But it's really the nature. It's really the nature and the character of that land that is important.
Right. Okay, so if there are no other questions, the chair would call for a motion to accept the donation and to forward the recommendation to the Board of Selectmen.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Okay, that passes.
Just sign.
The record will reflect that Commissioner Howard Vogel has joined the commission here at 7:50 p.m. Thank you.
Okay, so that will bring us to our next item, which is the acceptance of 17.56 acres of land off Saunders Lane, map 17, parcel 36, lot 28, parcel A, designated for, quote, conservation and open space in, quote, the Pine Saunders Lane subdivision by Rowley Pines Trust, and forwarding to the Board of Selectmen with the recommendation. I see a asterisk. Does that asterisk have a footnote on it, or
I'm
it's
sorry?
just part of it? Okay.
This has a little bit of a circuitous route. This just popped up
Okay.
2 days ago, I think, or 2 or 3 working days.
This is not, it's not related to the deed that needed to be re-recorded at the
No.
registry? Oh,
No.
okay.
Well, it has to do with the Saunders Lane subdivision. It's a separate parcel. It was the majority parcel of Saunders Lane. Recently, the back tax situation got resolved with it, but it was unclear how this needed to be finalized because the trustees of Rowley Pines Realty Trust had actually recorded a deed giving that parcel as well as the other parcel designated L that we had at the town meeting to the town, but the town would not accept the deed at the time because the back tax situation had not been resolved. And then parcel L was taken by tax title, the land taking, and that wiped out its tax obligation, and therefore it was transferred by article at town meeting. And so that resolved that. But this larger parcel, as I said, still had a small outstanding tax obligation. It got resolved, and then the town's land title or tax title attorney researched the situation and finally came back with a ruling. So the recommendation tonight is we need to, I've been told by council, that we need to seek a release and a trustee's certification from the trustees who we believe are still remaining from Rowley Pines Realty Trust. That trust was never dissolved. It still exists on the books of the Commonwealth, and therefore we need to get, I think it's called the trustee's certificate. That needs to be signed by them, and then they also need to sign the deed. So the request for the Commission's consideration tonight is to, with the contingency, sign the acceptance with the possibility of this being recommended to the Board of Selectmen if and when the Rowley Pines Realty Trust trustees sign off on their trustee certificate and the deed. So the acceptance page, if the Commission so chooses to vote to sign it tonight, will be held until the rest of the documentation that needs to make this transaction actually work has been consummated.
And who's working on that portion of things that we supposed to?
Town administrator and town treasurer.
Okay. Okay, so...
And this parcel was originally designated in the subdivision approval to be open space.
Okay.
So we're signing the deed in advance?
You'd be signing the acceptance page, but the rest of the deed hasn't been consummated yet, and this would only be advanced once the rest of the deed is consummated, and then it would be sent with a recommendation to the selectmen.
Yeah.
And you would hang on to it until such time? Okay. Given that, the chair would call for a motion to accept conditionally the 17.56 acres off of Saunders Lane designated for conservation, pending the resolution of the deed item. Do I hear such a motion?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's passed.
One of the trustees is still here in town. That's Frank Todd.
Oh.
Just not, at this point in time, I'm not sure that folks know the residences of the other folks.
But he might.
Pardon me?
But he might.
No.
He might, but I'm not sure that anyone's actually done a due diligence search, and with Google you can find just about anybody these days. So.
Or they can find you.
Either that or LinkedIn.
So that will bring us to our legal notices. As a matter of course, should we, we have in the past, but should we take the notice of intent and the stormwater management permit separately, or can we take them together?
We should read the legal notices separately, open those hearings, and there are slight differences.
Okay. All right, we'll take them separately then.
Yeah.
We'll take them separately. All right. This is a legal notice of Raleigh Conservation Commission in accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Law 131, Section 40, as amended, and the Town of Raleigh Wetlands Protection Bylaw. A public hearing will be held on Tuesday, June 18th, 2019, at 7:45 p.m. at the Room 5 of the Town Hall Annex at 39 Central Street to consider a notice of intent application filed by Robert Nixon Taylor Lane LLC for proposed limited project roadway stream crossing, retaining walls, 1,800 square feet wetland alteration, 3,800 square feet wetland replication, drainage, grading and associated utilities, including land off Weathersfield Street, Map 12, Lot 4, and land off Taylor Lane, Map 12, Lot 2, at 430 Weathersfield Street, Map 12, Parcel Lot 3, in Raleigh, Mass. And the applicant has the floor.
Good evening. My name is Maureen Harold from Norse Environmental Services. Here with me tonight is Rob Nixon from Bitterroot, the applicant for the project. So we filed a notice of intent for a limited project crossing. This crossing will eventually service the Falcon Ridge subdivision. The commission may recall this property. This is located off of 430 Weathersfield Street. We had filed abbreviated notice of resource area delineation last year, and the commission issued the ORAD, so that confirmed all of the wetland boundaries and the riverfront, so on and so forth for this property. What we're proposing to do is to upgrade the driveway that is presently there. So we have a 12-foot wide driveway that provides access to a single-family home. Now, some sort of driveway has been in existence since 1927, because that's when the single-family house was constructed. Right now, there is an existing 36-inch culvert under the driveway that provides the connection for Taylor Brook. So, as part of developing this property, we have to comply with the local planning board requirements, which would require us to upgrade the roadway. And in addition, to also meet the stream crossing standards that's required under the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act. Now, we meet this Massachusetts stream crossing standards to the maximum extent practicable. Because we have a 36-inch culvert, we have to be conscientious of any downstream flooding. So to prevent this downstream flooding, we've actually designed a custom culvert for this area. So if you take a look at this photo here that I handed out, it's just to give you a visual of the type of culvert that we're proposing. So essentially, on the inlet, we'll have a 3-foot wide, 3-foot high opening. And the purpose of that is to limit the amount of flow that goes downstream, and it's to match the existing conditions of the property. This area that's shaded will actually be a wall area, so that would help prevent additional water flowing downstream and flooding the downstream area. Now, on the downstream side of the culvert, we'll have a 4-foot high, 6-foot wide opening. We'll also provide boulders, access up to this 3-foot wide, 3-foot high opening for wildlife passage in that area. The purpose of this is to comply with the stream crossing standards as much as we possibly can while preventing downstream flooding. If you were to look at this layout here, this would be as if you're standing on top of the road and you're looking down. Here's the 3-foot high, 3-foot wide opening. Here's the 6-foot high, 4-foot wide box culvert. So essentially this whole area would be open with the stream flowing through, and we would have riprap around that area as well. So as part of the project, we are proposing BVW alteration. So we are proposing to alter 1796 square feet of BVW, and we're proposing to replicate 3825 square feet. So we're providing slightly 2 to 1 in terms of wetland alteration to wetland replication. In addition to try and reduce the impact, we are going to request some waivers from the planning board. So the planning board normally requires a 26-foot wide roadway. We're going to request a waiver for a 24-foot wide roadway. We're also going to request to eliminate sidewalks and granite curbing. And as part of this project, this will be a low impact design, so it'll be incorporate cross-country drainage and drainage swales in that area. In terms of the riverfront, so here's the inner riparian, which is the purple area. We're proposing to alter approximately 1% of the riverfront area for this roadway crossing. And I know I throw a lot at you right now, but I can open it up to any questions you may have.
One dumb question I didn't understand. So at one end you've got a 4-foot opening, and at the other end you got a 6-foot opening, right?
So
Does it taper? Or is it...
So at this end, it's a 3-foot wide, 3-foot high opening. So it would look like, here's the opening. So this would be the inlet here.
Okay, and then at the other end it's bigger, right?
It's bigger because in order to comply with the stream crossing standards, they like to see a 6-foot high, 4-foot wide, completely open box culvert from the inlet to the outlet. But because we're limited in terms of how much water we can let flow down gradient, we're providing this limited.
It's the size of the actual flow underneath is all the same, except the inlet.
Correct. Correct. So we're being creative to try and meet it to the maximum extent practicable. Okay.
Any other questions from the board? Brent, at this point, I'd like to get your input on the project, if you have any.
Conducted site walk today. If the plan could be flipped back over.
Sure.
There are three replication areas that are proposed. Two are up on the upstream side, both on the west and the eastern bank areas. And then the third larger replication area, which I didn't do the percentages, but I think it has something like 80% proposed square footage for replication, is located on the downstream side, on the easternmost side, closer to Weathersfield Street, and also significantly removed from where the stream bed is. The reason I was looking at those areas is because the two smaller replication areas on the upstream side are both also proposed to be sandwiched between the existing bordering vegetated wetlands and the proposed stormwater structures, which are shown in the dark green there. And I was concerned by the steepness of slope that I knew existed in those particular areas, as well as I wanted to see what the existing cover was, specifically the mature trees that had a potential for having to be removed in order to actually implement the replication. And I found 6 to 8 foot tall banks on either side, very steeply sloped, probably either a 3 to 1 or almost a 4 to 1, almost not stable. And on the western side, very large, mature oak trees that had actually survived the gypsy moth combination drought knockout punch and were live and flourishing, and anywhere from as small as 18 to 20 inches in diameter to as large as 26 to 28 inches in diameter. Probably, I think, 3 or 4 of them that would have to come out in order to do that. The larger replication area that's downstream and on the downstream side and towards Weathersfield Street that also had the largest amount of square footage, it's only partially depicted on that plan because it turns out it isn't wholly depicted on any of the plan sheets. That area, I think, is much more advantageous and has the potential for being utilized for all of the anticipated replication that they wish to do for this project. The steepness of the slope over there is very minimal. It actually transitions into a previously hayed field that now seems to have gone over to a significant amount of low bush blueberries. And the area that I believe where the replication is proposed does not have a high dominance of large mature woody trees. In fact, I think there's only one significant maple that the replication area could actually be wrapped around without, I think, negatively impacting that particular maple. All the other woody stem vegetation over in that area is much younger. So I just think that in terms of success, in terms of being able to prepare the replication area for intersection with the groundwater so that there's groundwater available for the wetlands plant species that will be put in there, as well as the accessing the site and the fact that the slope, the transition to the slope into the area that is not going to be disrupted and prepared for the replication area has a much greater chance of success, and also the development costs, I think, would also be significantly reduced. So as a result of the site visit, I'm specifically making the recommendation that the two proposed replication areas upstream be removed and be consolidated, and an accurate depiction of the larger downstream replication area to the east be prepared for the plan set, because I think that would be much more successful. In terms of overall regulatory compliance, I had a brief conversation with the chairman earlier, and I requested a request for a proposal from Worsley Witten, who has reviewed projects for the commission in the past for stormwater compliance. And in this case, I also requested compliance with the stream crossing standards to evaluate their proposal for the stream crossing as to whether that's actually an appropriate design strategy to have a box culvert that you then mainly block up and leave a small 3-foot square orifice in one end. It seems to be memorializing a restriction that wasn't designed at that crossing to begin with. So they have actually responded to the request, and also I had a phone conversation with them today, and so there actually is a revision that resulted in a reduction because they did not understand that this is just a small segment of the project. They quoted possibly with the thought process that they were going to have to review a much larger open space residential development. They revised their quote down from, let's see, $4,500. They revised it down to $3,200 to review this, and I'd like to make the recommendation to the commission. This particular proposal in this part of the project is not being reviewed by the planning board, and therefore is not being reviewed by H.L. Graham Associates, their technical consultant. And so this would be the first and only, possibly the only review, because this is the first coming to the Conservation Commission, not also simultaneously going to the planning board. So my recommendation that the commission would consider it is to direct the applicant or vote that the commission does need this input of expertise for this particular proposal, and request therefore that the applicant provide the funding for the $3,200 so that the commission may institute this third-party review right away.
Does that include a review of the replication areas to the south side of the?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll check with them on that. I told them today that, you know, I pretty much made this recommendation also. So the stormwater and the stream crossing standards are what I asked them to specifically weigh on.
It seems like I mean, I'm not an engineer certainly, so I value a second opinion. I can say that. Are there any other thoughts by members of the board regarding that?
I support the idea of having Horsley and Winton if the applicant approves it or agrees with it, review that. I do have a question that's kind of totally separate, so I'll wait until we get along.
So at this point, I guess the chair would call for a motion for a review to be conducted by Horsley Witten of these plans.
Should we ask first for acceptance?
Actually, the commission does not need the applicant's approval on this. The commission can make the determination that they need that engineering expertise in order to review this.
So the chair has called for a motion to send this to Horsley Witten for review.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Okay, great. So we'll get their opinion on how this could be possibly adjusted if necessary to reflect the replication and the
Just so the
Steam
commission
crossing.
knows, we don't have a problem relocating the replication area as suggested, so
okay, great.
that's not a problem on our end.
All right, great.
So in order to consummate that review, we would need the applicant to submit to the office the $3,200 so we can hold that.
So would you
Yes.
write and cut the check? Okay, great. That'd be, thank you. So,
Okay, Sam had another question.
Well, I had a question that I guess I'd say arose when you said that the planning board isn't going to look at this.
This has not been filed. This part of the project or the project itself, the roadway, has not been filed with the planning board yet.
Okay, so we're being asked at this point to approve this, even though the planning board has to still approve the narrow road.
Correct.
Okay.
so is the concern then that if the planning board rejects the narrower road, then the analysis will be invalidated?
Yeah.
Then the applicant would have to redesign the
Right,
the
we
road anyway.
understand we would have to come back to the commission. The thought was because this type of crossing is a bit unconventional, we're thinking out of the box with this, we can't comply with the stream crossing standards. We wanted to come to the commission first to have you review that. So that was the initial thought.
Should we make the submission to Horsley Witten conditional on the planning board's consideration of the project as presented?
No.
Okay.
I missed something in here. You said that you cannot meet the standards?
No, so we're meeting the stream crossing standards to the maximum extent practicable. And the reason why we can't meet the stream crossing standards is because if we take a 36-inch culvert out of the ground and we put a 4-foot wide, 6-foot high box culvert in, it's going to drain the upgradient cattail swamp. It's going to cause downstream flooding and erosion. So this is why we came up with this type of design to prevent downstream flooding, as well as to not ruin the cattail swamp, because that would eventually drain out and transition into a red maple swamp.
Okay. I understand the point now.
Okay. Does that conclude the business regarding the notice of intent for?
Well, not necessarily. So there were a number of statements that were made in my review of the narrative along with the notice of intent application, which folks with a longer history residing here in Raleigh can correct me on, but obviously in my tenure here, I have never heard stories of the Mill River Weathersfield Street crossing being washed out and overtopping and flooding on a regular basis, not until we got to the 2006 Mother's Day event. Their narrative statement in here, without any supporting chronological dates or anything, states that Weathersfield Street Mill River crossing washed out a number of times and flooded over the road. And I have not been able to find anybody residing here in Raleigh.
You're talking about the one right by
Right by
where this
where
comes out
Kurt
on?
Hannon used to live, right there.
I don't know. I'm not going to say it hasn't, but I don't know if you remember any, Judy?
Well, maybe one,
Yeah.
but I could be
Mother's
mistaken
Day.
about that too.
Yeah.
And that's important to consider because the alteration here would affect that upstream.
Well, that was being touted as one of the risks or issues with not having this orifice or
Designed this way.
this restriction in there. And I'm just saying that I'm unaware of anyone ever mentioning to me.
Okay. Okay.
Nor when that crossing was reconstructed, there wasn't any evidence. Like lots of times when roads wash out, you'll then see gravel sandbars right down gradient that have now clogged the channel and caused the stream to reroute. Exactly what you see on this particular depiction for this crossing, you can see that white area there right at the outlet, which that's exactly what that is. That's a gravel sandbar from the culvert in that roadway washing out when the beavers plugged and obstructed the culvert. So for future discussion, I was going to propose that when we're doing the wetlands replication, we actually might consider removal of that gravel sandbar that's sitting there blocking the historic channel of Taylor Brook, but that's for a little later. After.
Okay.
So if I understand what's being said here, by having that 36-inch culvert there, the way that I see it, the cattail swamp has been created.
That has to do with the invert of the inlet, not just the fact that there's a 36-inch culvert there. When you look at the USGS topo, what you actually see is indications of a ponded area, an area that has retained water and been inundated on a regular basis. That possibly speaks to the utilization of beavers of that particular site, and the fact that a 36-inch culvert with an associated gravel driveway of 30 to 40 feet on either side presents an absolutely marvelous damming opportunity to them. And in fact, I can remember issuing an emergency certification for the replacement of the culvert because they were trying to clean beaver debris out of one end of it, and the grandson on the backhoe caught the culvert pipe and ripped the culvert pipe up out of the roadway at one point too.
I mean, my overall concern is that this project makes worse the flooding over there.
And that is the engineer's concern, but again, I saw the redesign of Dodge Road Bridge Crossing, Weathersfield Street Mill River Crossing, and the Weathersfield Street Batchelder Brook Crossing. In all three of those instances, they went from small, restricted, either rectangular granite block culverts or circular metal culverts to much larger openness spans. Or Batchelder Brook has a box culvert.
That's why I was kind of wondering about this restriction.
Right. So that's one of the reasons to have this evaluated to see whether in fact that is
The way you go.
the way to go, or whether there's other considerations that might possibly be utilized.
Okay. All right, so we'll do that. You have a motion, I don't need to sign anything, so we'll move on to the 8 o'clock item then?
Well, it would be a request for permission to have a continuance.
Oh, thank you, yeah. So I would ask your permission for a continuance.
Yes, please.
So we will continue to the meeting of July the 9th.
Yes.
Oh, it does, okay. So I would call for a motion to continue this item to the meeting of the 9th.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Thanks.
pass.
So that'll bring us to the 8 o'clock. Do I have a legal notice to read?
Yes, you do.
This is a legal notice, the Rowley Conservation Commission, in accordance with the Town of Rowley Stormwater Management and Erosion Control Bylaw as amended. A public hearing will be held on June 18th, 2019 at 8 p.m. at the Town Hall Annex, located at 39 Central Street, to consider a stormwater management permit application filed by Taylor Lane LLC for proposed construction of subdivision roadway with stream crossing, retaining walls, 3,800 square feet wetlands replication, stormwater facilities, utilities, and associated grading. Total site disturbance is approximately 32,150 square feet at 430 Weathersfield Street, map 12, parcel lot 3 and 4, owned by Cheryl J. Moran and Patricia A. Simon, at land off Weathersfield Street and Taylor Lane, map 12, parcel lot 2, owned by Seaside Realty Trust in Rowley, Mass.
So I'm not sure how much the commission wants to get into a discussion regarding this permit, since Horsley and Witten will
Right.
be reviewing the stormwater. I'm not sure if you just prefer to continue and wait till we hear back from them and get their input.
I think that's probably appropriate. Does anybody have any objections to?
No, but I do want to make one mention to the commission that as well as my earlier concern about those smaller replication areas that were right up adjacent to the stormwater controls that are located on the upstream side of the crossing, that also the stormwater management BMBs that are located there, which I believe is not an appropriate way to have their outlets. Their outlets are directly discharging into the bordering vegetated wetlands.
So right here and here.
And I don't believe that is in compliance with stormwater standards to directly discharge into BVWs.
Okay.
I'm not aware of that, Brent. Brent could be 100% correct, and we can have Horsley
Well, it's
and Witten.
obviously one of the things that why this needs to be looked at.
Right, understandably so.
Okay. Thank you for that. Given your
I'd like
permission
to
to continue.
Continue, please.
Then I will call for a motion to continue.
May I, Chair, if I may, I'd also like to float the idea, and I'm sure the applicant has considered this, at least I would assume they had, and that is I believe the commission should consider that this stormwater management permit, the whole project is going to need a stormwater management permit. And I think the commission should look at this with the understanding that this is going to be amended so that we're just going to have one stormwater management permit to cover all of the project. Because it would make no sense to issue a stormwater management permit for
Right.
just this section of roadway and then have the other sections of roadway with their disturbance and stuff on a different, separate permit. I mean, it's...
Sounds right.
That works.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for pointing that out. So I'll call for a motion to continue the item to our meeting of July the 9th. Do I hear such a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Continued. Thank you. Okay, the next item is a continued item. I should just read from the agenda then, right?
Correct.
This is a continued notice of intent, a continued notice of intent, application at 491 Main Street, map 31, parcel lots 26 and 27A, Paul Varias, proposed construction of a private road and common driveway, single-family dwelling 28 by 64 and a garage 28 by 36, stormwater facilities, grading and utilities, possibly within 100-foot buffer zones, bordering vegetated wetlands, salt marsh, land subject to coastal storm flowage, and Great Marsh ACEC. The next item is also continued. Appropriate to read that continuance as well at this time?
Sure.
Okay. We'll do the 8:30 as well, which is a continued stormwater management permit application at 491 Main Street, map 31, parcel lots 26 and 27A, Paul Varias, proposed construction of a private road and common driveway, a single-family dwelling 28 by 64, a barn 30 by 60, and two garages 24 by 24 and 28 by 36. Stormwater facilities, grading, and utilities. Total site disturbance is approximately 34,000 square feet. Applicant has the floor.
My name is Deb Colbert with Hancock Associates. We've been before you where this is a continuance. We have also been in front of the planning board, and we have had review by H.L. Graham Associates to review the planning board application and then also this application. We've been back and forth, and we have revised the plan to H.L. Graham Associates' liking. We've had full discussion with them, and the planning board is waiting for just a letter for him that says that the plan has met all of his recommendations. We've met with Brent here and have been back and forth with him and Graham Associates, and we have made minor adjustments, and I believe that we have come into agreement with Brent on the requirements and needs of his recommendations.
Okay, so at this point, you're just looking for us to approve the plans as is, or are we still waiting for additional revisions? Or
Well, so at this point, the plans, in a sense, have gone through their final revisions today. I believe that means they need to be submitted to H.L. Graham Associates.
They have already been submitted to H.L. Graham Associates,
Okay,
and we're just waiting for his letter of acceptance.
okay, we're waiting for the same letter in regards to the stormwater management permit aspect of things, and the implications of stormwater under the notice of intent. But Deb and I went over a few things that requested some adjustments in, a change in detail on the erosion control so it would show the lapping of the ends, a clarification about two plan sheets that had symbology that for the same thing that weren't exactly the same on either plan sheet, and then also the fact that the no cut, no disturbance zone up by the entrance off of Main Street extended over the road and stuff, which obviously is not going to be a restricted no cut, no disturbance area. So I requested that be depicted as stopping at the boulder retaining wall for that incline or descending portion of the, I guess you call it a roadway now, as opposed to driveway. And then the compensatory no cut, no disturbance area was hatched and shown as going into what was already a no cut, no disturbance zone, so that needed to just be pulled out of there and broadened to the outside, contiguous to the pre-existing no cut, no disturbance area, just to show its repositioning and compensatory for the driveway work. Other than that, we'd already talked in previous meetings about conditions. The garage proposed for the existing structure shows crushed stone infiltration trenches for the roof runoff. We also talked today about a condition that will direct field determination of where some posts go in to mark the restricted area down on that portion of the property. I don't think there's any other portions of the property where the new barn, new residence, or other living areas come in close proximity to what's previously been a no-cut, no-disturbance area. So other than that, if the commission so choose, the commission could vote contingent upon the submittal of the actual printed out stamped plans to just make sure that those changes actually get translated onto the paper as we discussed today. That would be the only contingency, and for the stormwater permit aspect of things, waiting for Mr. Graham's letter to go into the records saying that the site is in compliance. So those are the only two real contingencies. I would recommend that if the board, if they so choose, vote to direct that an order of conditions and a stormwater management permit with the conditions as discussed for the proposed activities of a single-family residence and construction of a barn and a detached garage, and the roadway work towards the Main Street end there be permanent.
Okay. Would we expect to see H.L. Graham's response in time for the next meeting?
I talked to him verbally, yes, so he just has to prepare he's preparing a written memorandum, which is part of his normal modus operandi to provide a record for both boards saying that everything's been working.
Right, yeah. So the planning board has accepted his recommendations, and they're waiting for a letter from him. He spoke with Brent in regards to this meeting, and he's happy with all of our responses, and he's seen the revisions. He just hasn't formally written the letter. So if you could grant this, acceptance contingent on receiving the letter.
Okay.
Brent and I met and talked today at 4:30, so I wasn't able to make these minor changes, but we definitely will make those changes and get back to you with that.
Okay, so a contingent upon the receipt of the new plans and Graham's letter, we would issue the order of conditions for both the stormwater management permit and the notice of intent.
So you need only one motion?
I
both?
think I need two motions, because
Yes.
they're both.
Okay.
So we'll start with the first one. So this is for an issuance of the order of conditions for the notice of intent at 491 Main Street, contingent upon the conditions discussed. Do I hear such a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor? Aye. And calling for a motion to issue an order of conditions for the stormwater management permit at 491 Main Street, with contingent upon the conditions as discussed. Do I hear such a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor? Aye. Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you sign?
Oh, there you go. Sorry. So that'll bring us to our status reports. I think it's appropriate that with Steve here, we go ahead and jump right to 285 Central Street, if there are no objections.
I recuse myself.
Very good. So this is a status report for 285 Central Street, Rowley, Mass., map 28, parcel lot 6, Seaview Retreat, Inc., under consideration of the issuance of an enforcement order for construction of a forest cutting landing and access. Is it new activity, 100-foot buffer zone to BVW that needs to be permitted or qualified agricultural exempt for normal maintenance and improvement, 310 CMR 1004. So, Steve, when we were here last, we talked about submitting a request for determination of applicability. Have you done that or considered doing that?
I have not done that, and I have no time.
Okay. Are you working in the resource area?
I'm always working in the resource area.
Okay. You understand that the exemption or the acknowledgement of an exemption has to be issued by this board in accordance with the laws that we've outlined before. You've given us your interpretation of them. We thank you.
Have you ever issued one before?
I'm sorry?
Have you ever issued one before?
Have I ever issued a what?
An exemption for an agricultural operation?
I can't. That's immaterial at this time. The proper course of action here, as outlined by town council in previous meetings, is for you to submit a request for determination of applicability.
Well, with all due respect, I think he's wrong. And when you do that, I don't think he really cares, because the longer this goes on, the more he gets paid. I don't think he has a clue what he's talking about when it comes to an agricultural situation. I have given you all the information.
You haven't.
I have.
No, I don't think you have.
And I gave you a letter that depicts everything that I've done, that I wasn't demanding to do, or I didn't have to do by law. Okay, I did it to be a good neighbor.
What you have to do is you have to submit the RDA.
I don't.
Okay.
Show
Well then.
me something that says that I have to submit that.
Okay. Well, it's it's Wetlands Protection Act 310 CMR, and we can go through it.
310 CMR,
You know,
okay.
we can go through that, but I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to waste the commission's time.
310 CMR protects me. Okay, I've given you what you need to make the determination that we are exempt. Okay, I don't need your exemption. I already have it. So, I mean, we can talk about this for the next 50 years.
But we're not going to do
Maintain
that.
the town of Rowley.
We're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. At your request, we are going to move to the issuance of an enforcement order.
Okay.
Okay. So, the applicant,
Are you going to put it in writing this time?
you bet. Yeah.
Excellent.
And we're going to issue. I'm going to call for a motion to issue an enforcement order at 285 Central Street, Rowley, Mass, for operations within the resource area. Do I hear such a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. If you want to submit the RDA, we'll entertain it.
I'm not going to
I didn't think you would, but
I've
that's
submitted everything required in your RDA already, and you haven't read it. You haven't answered any of my damn questions. You totally ignored my letter. All right? I've got a hazardous waste dump that I brought to Brent's attention over a year ago. Nothing has been done about it.
well. We can.
So I went ahead and I did your job, and I have a report here, which was very expensive.
Are you going to submit that to
I am
us?
going to submit this, and I'm hoping you'll do something at least about that. All right? Lead levels are insane. And it's been sitting there for a year, and you guys haven't done a damn thing about it. Now you have to. So submit it.
Is this sufficient for a submission?
I haven't looked at it.
Okay, so thank you. We'll take a
You're
look at
welcome.
that. So, in regards to that, that brings us to our next item, this report of dumping of waste in regulated resource areas, also at 285 Central Street. This was you sent us some pictures of a few items that look like they've probably been there for a little while. I acknowledge that. And then you issued a no trespass decree to our agent, forbidding him from entering onto the property to investigate that. So I'm trying to understand and justify how one coincides with the
If you
other.
can't understand that by now, I can't explain it to you.
Well, I'd like you to try, because we need him to
Okay.
investigate
So-
these matters.
Poses a threat to our continued agricultural operation at this point, because he showed his bias.
We're not
Okay?
going to go there. No,
All right.
we're not.
You
We're
asked
not.
me,
We're not.
so I'm
We're not
telling
going to go
you.
there. We're not.
You know
We're
what?
not.
I got the impression that this conversation was over. You've asked me to come down here again. I got that impression because you said this discussion is over. All right? I don't want to keep going over this. It's getting very tedious. He's not allowed on the property. If he goes
It's going
on
to
the
inhibit. It's going to inhibit our ability to investigate
No, it
your
doesn't.
request.
You guys can walk just as well as he can. Your eyes are working. I'm sure you can see it. But you don't have to now. Nobody has to go down there because I
We
paid
are going.
somebody to do it.
We're going to consider this issuance of a no trespass order as your rescission of your report of dumping of waste that you wish us to investigate. Okay, because we need his expertise to investigate this. Okay, I need his expertise to investigate this. So I would ask that you kindly consider revoking, rescinding the no trespass order, so that we can do the job you've asked us to
I'm
do.
not going to do that. I don't want him on the property. Okay?
Then-
he poses a threat. I don't
Then
want
you
him
don't
on
want
the
your
property.
you don't want the dumping
What do you guys
investigated.
do anyway? Every time a decision is made, you all look over that one. he's any more competent than the rest of you to make decisions.
Okay, that's enough. That's enough. That's enough.
Is
We're
this
not.
discussion over again?
Yeah, this discussion is
Okay.
over. Thank you for coming by.
Steve, can I ask one question? Is there any way that you would allow Brent and one of us on the property at the same time?
I will allow any of you guys.
But he can't come with us.
I don't want him on the property, and if he does, he'll be arrested. Okay? I've had it with him. You guys still trust him, that's your problem. I don't. Don't want him on the property. Okay?
There is no condition that you feel that you would allow him on the property.
In no condition whatsoever. I think I've made that clear because I've made it formal.
Okay, so now
Okay? You guys can go down there.
Let the record show. Let the record show that
You don't have to. It's all right here. There's a site plan. Tells you exactly what's there, exactly what's in the pile, where it's coming from.
this is your attempt. This is your attempt to hamstring us and then criticize us when we don't jump high enough. That is my opinion.
When you don't jump high enough.
Yeah, when we don't jump too, because you've taken away our best authority.
I'm not taking away, no.
You've taken
You
away
guys
our
just
best
need to
authority
get
to
out
do
the
our
field.
job.
That's
You've
all.
taken away our best authority to do our job, and you're going to complain about how we do it now.
I don't know where you get that, okay? I'm asking you to do your job, and I'm asking for a fair shake. I have included you in on something I didn't need to include you in on, and that's my agricultural operation, my family's agricultural operation, all right? You guys want the authority, so I've given you some authority to do your thing, but I really didn't have to do that. You guys came at me. This is my second cease and desist order on this project. Okay? You just rescinded it. Now you're giving it to me again.
At your request.
At
At your request.
Okay, fine. I hope you do it right this time. But you're putting yourself out there again. You're digging a bigger hole. I'm not taking anything away from you guys. I'm just trying to give you a heads up. I'm not going to tolerate this treatment anymore.
Neither are we.
I think over the last 10 years, I've given him a fair shake. I can't say the same for him giving it to me, okay? I have been pushed by this individual too long. I've been submissive. I shut my mouth.
That's it.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
it. Thank you much. There's the door.
The discussion over again?
Yeah, we're done.
All right. Just a thought. You better read it. You have 120 days to do
I'll
something.
read every letter, okay?
Perfect. I don't know why you got this attitude. I'm just asking for a fair shake here.
You'll get it. Guaranteed.
Okay. I'm not getting
That's my promise to you. You'll get a fair
that
shake.
I'm going to get a fair
Yeah,
shake.
yeah.
You
We're
can't
done.
promise
We're done.
that.
We're done.
He's in the control here. You can't promise that.
No, I'm in control. We're in control. He
You know
works
what?
for us. Okay.
I'd like
We're
to
done.
hear that. I'd like to hear that.
If you got a problem with something that he does on our behalf, your problem is with us. You understand that?
You're right.
Okay.
And that's why I've kept my mouth shut. Because I respect everybody on the board. And I've put up with this crap. Okay? But I've got to my point, and you guys need to know that I've got to my point. All right? I have been very honest on this project and every other project, not hiding anything. I included him in on everything that we've done. Read the letter I gave you. It goes.
I've
it
read
goes day by day.
I've read everything you've ever given this commission. Okay, while I've been on it in this matter, I've read it. Okay, you have my personal assurance, and I've considered every applicable law that I could find. I went through the meeting minutes of the 26th, and I found your references, and I looked them up, and I understand the applicability. And our decision is that they're not applicable. So
What's
you,
not applicable?
that you need to submit an RDA, and we've been over this.
Because you don't think I'm exempt, even though that I've proved that it's an ongoing operation. That's what it comes down to.
Hey, Steve, the issue is we have a process. We're asking you to go through with the process, right? And in both cases, there's a process, right? And what you're trying to say is that you're above the process.
I'm not above the process.
That's what we mean.
Because I don't think I'm above the process, I've gone through everything. I really didn't have to go through.
You're doing what you think you have to do. You're not doing what the process asks.
I am a regulatory officer, okay?
Sure.
I follow regulations, I read regulations,
Sure you do.
and I pay attention to them. If there's a loophole, I will jump through it, and I have every right to do it. In this instance, the word exempt means that I will not be held to the standards of others by having this exemption. That's what it means. I have proved to you, beyond a reasonable doubt, that this is an ongoing operation. Now, you tell me that this is new activity. Well, I'll give you that in this area, but the lot has always been agricultural. It has been continuous, and it has been uninterrupted, and it's been under the same owner since the late 70s, I believe.
Yeah, I did a deed research.
And it's protected. Now, if I want to drive a semi-trailer down the road without a plate on it, there's a lot of people that are going to object to that. There's a lot of officers that are going to object to that and pull me over. All right? I have an exemption, and I can drive a semi down the road without a plate on it.
That's
There's a
the
lot
authority of
people
someone
that
on
don't
board.
understand that. This is the same thing.
Well,
It's an
in your mind.
exemption.
Okay, all right.
And it seems unfair. I get it. And that is why I went through all these hurdles because
Sure.
I don't think I'm above the law. I don't think I'm above the
Yeah.
the wetlands. I
You only,
don't.
but you only had to go through one. You only had to submit the RDA. That's the only one you had to go through.
But you understand, all right, Kate,
So-
this is a matter of principle now. I have submitted all the information that's required.
Did we receive an
on the
RDA? Did we receive an RDA? So we didn't receive an RDA.
Say that again?
We didn't receive an RDA.
Okay, didn't file an RDA per se, but everything that you want in the RDA has already been given. If you've read the forestry submission, it's all in there. You got the plot plans, you've got wetland delineation, you got everything to make a decision. I don't understand why I have to do it again, because I didn't have to do it in the first place.
Well, I don't know what to tell you.
I don't expect you to listen to me keep rambling. Just please read what I gave you. All right? And that
Hand
explains
to God,
everything.
I will read everything. Hand to God.
All right.
Please sign in if you haven't already.
Why did you recuse yourself?
He doesn't have to.
It sounds like I'm making enemies down here. Mrs. Keys, I've known you forever. I respect you. And I'm sorry about our last meeting. You blew me away. That your opinion of me has deteriorated over the last 30 years. I don't understand it. I asked for some questions to be answered. They're simple questions. None of them have been answered. And I don't understand why. And I don't need a public apology, especially from Mrs. Keys. I asked for it because Mr. Bazelak has asked for it from you guys. And for the life of me, I can't understand that. You're apologizing for me telling him the truth?
You can, okay. If you're
Send
gonna,
it.
All right. I'm sorry that it's got to this point. And I'm digging my feet in. And I don't want to do this anymore.
all right.
All right? But this...
I just told you, we're not...
You cream me all you want, okay? Do the cease and desist. I mean, I'm pretty much done with what I need to do. We're going to go in another direction. However, this is kind of important, all right? And I don't want to be blamed for everybody on Central Street drinking their daily cup of lead. Something needs to be done about it, and I don't want it on my head. I didn't put it there. It's on her property, and it's going into my property. I want it cleaned up. I'll stop working down there, okay? I'd like to clean up some of the mess that's out in the other road, and then I'll stop until we work this out. I will respect your order, all right? But I think before you write it up, You need to really look at the regulations as they apply to agricultural operations. I will respect your order, okay? But before you write it up, just make sure you guys are 100%.
Thanks.
All right?
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Do we need an action for this?
We've already made the motion to issue the enforcement order at 285 Central Street. I'm going to call for a motion to treat the issuance of the no trespass order by Mr. Conley issued to Brent as a withdrawal of his request to investigate the alleged dumping. Do I hear such a motion?
Can you say that one?
Yeah, so Mr. Conley,
I understand.
Mr. Conley issued Brent specifically a no trespass order,
Yes.
as he's just described. It is my contention that that no trespass order is a de facto withdrawal of his submission of a report reporting the dumping of waste, and a request that we investigate. And I'm calling for a motion to treat that no trespass order as such.
So the problem is, we've got a situation where there could be definitely a conservation issue. And because of his non-agreeance to allow our agent to go on the property and investigate that, we would then say that we're not going to investigate.
No, it's my...
I hear what you're saying. I'm just trying to say is,
Yeah.
and I don't know where the even ground is. I just feel as
Well, this is
as being on the
specific.
commission, we have a potential problem.
I'm gonna say, I'll clarify this. His issuance of the no trespass order applies specifically to Brent, and my understanding that my application here applies specifically to the dumping of waste that he reported in the manner of these photos that he submitted. It does not apply to this report, which I have not read. It does not apply to any subsequent dumping events. But if this particular one, that it came in such temporal proximity to the issuance of the no trespass order, I qualify as a rescission of his request to investigate. Can he?
Are you still recused? If you're recused,
You got to decide if you want to come back.
Can he make a comment as a member of the?
not if he's recused.
Intend to recuse myself from this subject of this, so I'll be quiet.
Is there any way, I'm just thinking out of the box, okay? Is there any way that we could, just like we do with stormwater management, where we hire an engineering firm and they pay?
Well, so I don't know that, were you involved with, Dan and Sam had a conversation that included me and town council. And town council acquainted this or linked this to you dialing 911
Right.
for an emergency. And then when the officer showed up, you didn't like that officer, you told him to get lost.
Yeah.
So in a sense, I believe what the chairman is trying to say here is that your tool, your
Yeah, I
staff
know.
person who you rely upon the field knowledge, their expertise or whatever, and also their feet to do the on-the-ground stuff, that he's nullified the effectiveness for this commission to
And
do
he has the
site-
right to do that?
Yeah. Well, he's basically said, you can investigate this, but I'm not letting your staff person who does all your investigative work for you come on the property.
It's as I said, it feels like an attempt to manipulate our response. It feels like
process.
It feels like an attempt to, set us up for failure and to criticize us when we fall down. And I'm exactly. And
Well,
I'm not.
it's very disrespectful. I mean, if he has any respect for your capacity to have a staff person who you have some type of confidence and you town hired for their expertise,
It's almost like somebody tells me their house is on fire, and now I show up at my fire department, and they say I don't want the fire department on the property.
Yeah.
But as a fire department, would you still go in? I guess that's what I'm trying to get at. In other
Well,
words,
the town council also offered the opinion that should something like an enforcement order be necessary for investigation, that a court order could be obtained to enter the property in response to the no trespass thing. I don't think we're there yet for a report of dumping based on the pictures that I saw.
Okay, so maybe we go with the motion you suggested. I just don't feel comfortable feeling that there might be a problem, a boiling pot, like that's out there, and we don't do our due diligence to understand if this boiling water is going to erupt and burn somebody. That's my...
Dumping of solid waste is not just a ConCom jurisdictional item. It actually is jurisdictional to the health department.
So maybe they... Exactly.
There we go.
Well, but again, I don't know what this report says, but
Okay.
But remember, the initiation of this was that he ascribed stuff that he found on his property that was the common boundary with the Sousa's property. He somehow was able to tell that it originated from the Sousa's property, even though the age of the material that I saw, what little bit I saw, which was a very little bit, the age of that material seemed to predate the Sousa's actually building their house.
Can we continue this based on the fact that we do read this and try to... I mean, I'm not trying to take away from...
Well, it's not illegal.
I'm not trying to take away from the fact that we are not going to have somebody compromise our process. Okay? That is one. And so I'm not by any means a proponent of, of somebody trying to, being able to manipulate our process. Okay? I just want to make sure we don't ignore
What could be a
legitimate
issue.
Of course.
issue. That's all I'm saying. And whatever the best way to do that.
Well,
Can I say something?
of course.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't know if it's off the wall or not and caving into Steve, but is there any way we could designate another expert to go in our behalf? Say, borrow an agent from a neighboring town?
Well, if we do that, we set a precedent. I think that says that Steve gets
really
as much as he
able
said today that he's not trying to get special attention or special treatment. If we do that, we set the precedent that he does get special treatment.
Yeah,
And
Well, can somebody document what they find on the property and then report it to Brent for his inspection?
Well, again, dumping of solid waste is not just a Conservation Commission issue. It's, in general, it's a health department issue.
Well, do we need
can
to
we have a
If you can go and look at that.
Okay, so
Again,
here's what
I
I'm
don't
going to
know what
say.
that report said.
Here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to call for a motion that we, contingent upon the review of this material, we consider moving this item, the investigation of the dumping, to the authority of the Board of Health. Contingent upon the review of this, and
Well, we can approach them about it.
We need to approach them.
yeah,
on
we
it.
exactly.
See
So
what
do
their
I hear
position would be.
do I hear a motion?
I would agree to that.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. So contingent upon review of this, we will approach the Board of Health about investigating
The dumping
dumping
allegation.
of waste. I still feel that that's special treatment, but it's less special than hiring out somebody else or,
Well, we may still have to do it, who knows?
yeah. Okay. It was good.
Yes, we did.
So, that was good. That was-
Oh, we didn't go on that. Yeah, yeah.
Did I call an all in favor? All in favor of that?
That motion?
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye. So it's unanimous.
4 years.
4 years.
4 years.
All right. Steve? Actually, Steve. Sam?
Welcome back.
Right on the saddle.
So, we'll talk now about 34 Dodge Road. This is map 5, parcel 104, lot 3, Giuseppe Giuliano, owner Angelo Giardello of ERA Equipment, depositing fill containing construction and demolition debris in violation of issued permit SMP number 24-2017. As I recall, clearly this was the matter where the deposition was contained plenty of construction debris. The owner and Mr. Giardello of ERA were here, and we presented them with two options: either clean it all out, or to they were positing the approach of sifting it, and we said you can sift it, but you're going to test it otherwise. And I've been by the site a couple of times. It's honestly hard for me to tell if anything's changed.
Nothing.
I don't
I've been
think.
driving by
Yeah.
that. I drive by that every day.
Yeah.
Nothing's changed. If anything, some smaller piles of loam have been deposited right in the front of the building. I went by and hand-delivered, I left on the wiper of his truck there in a plastic bag so it would be protected, the amended enforcement order, and put my card in the door, but I haven't had any communication.
There's been less, I noticed there used to be people working there
Yeah.
regularly. There has been recently, I have seen a lack of activity
Yeah, he dismissed most of them,
of the site. I don't know what's going on.
so he said.
Okay.
Giuseppe said he dismissed most of them because most of them would tell him they'd do the job in 3 days, and then after 5 to 6 days, they were still doing whatever it was. He accused them of them trying to rip him off.
Okay.
And I
In
think
terms of his
he may
size.
have been experiencing financial constraints in his ability to pay workmen also. I mean, I don't know. He blurted out a number of things to me that had nothing to do with conservation or stormwater.
And when was this?
Pardon me?
When was that?
When I first delivered and had the
after our
session with
meeting.
him, yeah.
Okay.
No, when I first
Oh, when you first did it.
I first served him with the cease and desist.
And when did you leave the thing on his car? The amended enforcement order?
I think it was Monday.
Okay.
Still there. Because I saw that. I thought on the truck, I thought it was like a police thing saying, get your truck off the lawn.
Really? Oh, okay.
And so it's like a red envelope, or, yeah, it's still
Yeah, one's been put in the mail to him, but I knew it wouldn't
yeah, it's still there.
take longer to get to him, so.
So, I mean, at this point, what are our options? We consider
At this
enforcing
point,
the enforcement order?
I would recommend that we issue a letter telling him that pick a date that you want him to have done something by, and
Next
that
meeting.
we consider issuing fines
Yeah.
if by that date he hasn't, taken some kind of action to resolve the issue of that contaminated fill or construction and demolition.
We'd send that letter by certified mail and receive it.
Yeah, as
request
well
it.
as hand deliver it and stuff too, yeah.
Are you thinking 2 weeks?
Before the next meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably 2 weeks.
After when do we expect it
So that by the time of the next meeting it's resolved.
resolved, or that something's happening?
well, I guess suppose we take that into consideration if something's happening, but I'd like to see it resolved by, I mean, it's already been 2
Yeah,
meetings.
I mean, he's already had 3 weeks to do
Yeah.
something.
So, that said, I mean, that's reasonable, I think.
We'll send him a letter, give him
Yeah, okay, so the chair calls
14
for,
days from today. And
the chair will call for a motion to issue a letter by certified mail receipt requested to the owner, about the, status of the enforcement order and the commission's consideration of fines pending the removal, pending the non-removal of material beginning within the next 14 days.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
it was unanimous.
Okay, so we're going to just write them to 14 days. Comply. All right, so that'll bring us to 579 Weathersfield Street, map 11, parcel 58, lot 6, Gregory Cassiotis, owner, depositing manure and stall sweepings in local regulated wetland resource areas.
So on Monday, I conducted a site visit at their invitation out at their property, measured from wetlands flag that I could find in a prominent location, determined that at least 25 feet of, or the deposited manure, there was at least, it was 25 feet into the 100-foot buffer zone of the isolated vegetated wetlands. He had also had a couple of paths. One path goes to an area that frequently is ponded in there, that he actually has removed the brushes and stuff so that he can have a natural ice skating area when it freezes in the winter, if it does freeze appropriately. He had used the manure and stall sweepings to like put mulch or covering, like wood chips, the path going to it. So I told him he had to remove that, pick that up with a shovel, and like it said, I determined that only 25 feet of this large area of manure, which was probably 40 feet wide. So we found an area where he could simply come in and have all the parts of that mound that were within the 100-foot buffer zone relocated and moved out of the 100-foot buffer zone. I said more than likely you can hire someone with a bobcat. It was easily accessible, and then could just scrape off the surface and just relocate it out of the 100-foot buffer zone. I figured that was adequate for what the commission's intent was. Also under consideration here was that most of that material had been out there for so long that it had actually pretty much composted in and of itself. It wasn't showing any structural rigidity of the horse patootie anymore, or whatever. It actually was a pretty rich compost material, which is what he was using it for, to compost his garden and stuff. So
So that's been
it's been out there for quite a long time.
Okay.
Granted, there was new stuff, but he was now taking the new stuff and keeping it away from that area. I figured that would meet the criteria that the commission
I think so.
wanted to accomplish. I didn't want to make too much out of it, to be honest with you.
I respect that, yeah. I think so that, so we consider the matter resolved then, and there's no...
Well, they're going to
need
call me. They've got to hire someone to come in there with the appropriate equipment and do it, and then they're going to call me
Okay.
to have me come back out
Okay,
to
so this is-
verify. I found some dead branches and marked it with some ribbons so I could show them where that 100-foot edge was, and to move the material out of there. So.
Okay, so we don't have to, this is just a status report. We don't need to
Status
vote on
report.
anything or anything.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
All right, thank you for that then.
It's an easy one.
Yeah. Okay, so on to new business. Sam has been appointed to serve as the representative to the Community Preservation Committee. Is that true?
Well,
No, you have voted to approve me last week, but for some reason,
They didn't realize, they didn't consider you serving the tail end of Kurt Turner's
Yeah, yeah.
So they just asked that Sam get appointed, I guess it's just for a year, for the next year from
So is that a vote?
Yeah, we are going to have a rigorous debate about this.
Yeah.
July 1st to June 30th, 2020.
He did kind of screw up in his 2 months in there. So, anyways. So we got to vote?
Yeah.
Yes.
So we call for a motion on the appointment of Sam to serve as representative to CPC. Move, do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor? Aye.
I'm sorry, who did the moving and who did the seconding?
I first.
Howard moved.
Second.
Okay. Bob Garner seconded. And Sam's our duly appointed representative to the CPC.
And another reappointment of Howard Vogel to be liaison to the Open Space Committee.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
I guess so.
Okay, this one's a recognition of Kurt Turner's service to the ConCom. When I found out that he'd been on the ConCom for 31 years, I was pretty impressed, especially given...
What type of recognition did you,
Well,
I mean, I've already given him my thanks in the past, so.
My wife suggested a book that was by an author in Ipswich about the marsh and natural history and stuff, but I've got to find it somewhere. She sent it to me and I couldn't locate the email, but she thought that might be an appropriate gift, being local author and about the environment. And,
Can you find out what that is, and we can
yeah.
discuss that? Okay. Do we need to vote on that? Yes.
Well, if I send it around to you guys, I mean, it doesn't have to be an open meeting
Yeah,
deliberation. They could just send it around to you, and if you think, oh,
we're
great,
not
that's
changing the
fine,
name of
go
the
ahead.
annex or anything, although that might come up next meeting.
Maybe.
All right,
So I'll have to get the monies for next year.
okay, so you will need a vote for that then, I guess, right? No?
No, normally we all kick in.
All right.
Okay. Good name.
Okay, we'll do that.
Okay, so, and the last item on the agenda is the review and approval of the letter for Agent Brent Baselak. This is in response to a letter from Brent issued on the 18th of April, I believe it was, regarding the meeting of the 26th, and I believe it's been distributed.
Yeah.
Everybody have a chance to read that?
So, well written. I think you captured the way we feel.
I think I agree, and I thank the Vice Chairman for his input into that as well. So with that, I'll call for a motion to issue the letter. I'd like to, I suppose, is it appropriate to read the letter, read the letter into the record, because it is formal.
I requested it be read at the next meeting.
At the next meeting?
When there's people here.
Yes, sure, absolutely.
Since I was eviscerated while people were here.
Yep, no, that's totally appropriate. I move that we table the reading of the letter until the next meeting.
Do that at the beginning of the meeting?
Do that at the beginning of the meeting.
Yeah, but people are around.
Someone has to have a copy to sign.
Right.
Okay.
So, do I have such a motion to table the letter till the next meeting? Oh, we can't table it to the next meeting because I'm not going to be here at the 9th. If that's okay. I'm not going to be here on the 9th.
Okay.
Well, can we still do it?
You can. You can.
Pardon me?
I don't know if we'll allow that.
You know, not to be here either.
Sorry.
So, I guess I'll leave it to whoever's in charge at that meeting to decide if you want to leave it to the 30th. But it is tabled until the next meeting if I have the motion. Second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor? Aye. Thank you, everybody. Okay, the last item I just wanted to bring up about the quorum. When Howard, you brought this up, and I mistakenly said, I think it was a mistake, that we needed 4. I mean, I was just going by the Latin root quorum. But That's not the case, if everyone has had a chance to read this memo. I think, we're being conservative with that four-member minimum, but I think we could end up in a situation where there's only three of us here. So it's important, I think, that we be aware of that loophole to.
But it did say, based on reading that in our case where we have 5
Three is a majority.
active members now, right?
So that's
that
just what it
3
is. You
would
have
be
to have a
allowed.
majority.
That's the
The
way I
Five.
see it.
the seated members, yeah.
I read that.
Okay, so that means it'll change as we gain.
If we gain membership.
Gain
Correct.
members.
Correct. With the full board at 7, then the maximum is 4. So I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. I mean, going forward, when we do an analysis of quorum, should it continue to be the format? We should probably decide to use the 3-member designation.
Well, the majority
Yeah, the majority
of the board.
at the time. I think that's
Is everybody,
Do you want me to just request to check with town council to see if that's an
Well, I
appropriate
did.
interpretation?
I did.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh.
And that's I asked him about that specifically. I gave him this, and that was his opinion that
Oh.
3 is fine for
Oh, okay.
for a board of 5.
I mean, I thought it sounded reasonable, but I'm sorry, I must have missed the fact that you
Okay.
checked with Mr. Mullins. So.
All right, then that's how we'll move forward.
Okay.
With that,
Do not adjourn.
I'm not adjourning. I'm not adjourning.
Well, first off, I need to get signatures, and then I'll work with the chairman in regards to the actual
I was just
verbiage.
going to suggest that perhaps it should be submitted to the MECC about Kurt's service.
That's a good idea.
If they offer
That's a very good idea.
Yeah.
that kind of information, just recognizing.
Yes, I like that idea.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a good idea.
We should.
Now, do you want to sign that, Sam? You recused yourself.
I assumed you were handing something that was related to something else.
The-
That's
no.
going to be for,
Do we need another signature page?
if it's easily accessible. I didn't really sign it, but
I
it's
think you
close
just cross
enough.
it out and initial it, right?
They already did it initially.
Just put an X through it or a line.
Yeah.
Why don't you sign over here?
This board associates thing about the gas property, is that basically just saying that they can't build there yet? Because that property is now cleaned up?
You know, that's an interesting question. I'm going to have to contact them, I guess. I think they're also out of compliance with the permit that we issued. But yeah, that was my thought too when I read that. They haven't really done the cleanup. I guess
Where they are in the
they ran out the time clock that they had to file with the state to say that they were going to clean it up.
that's the way it reads to me.
Okay, yeah, that, because I read that, I go, hey, what does this really mean? Okay.
Yeah,
So that's why it sits there with nothing going on.
Because they can't sell it.
Yeah, I'm waiting for my coffee shop to be down in there. You know?
So, are we all set? Should we call for a motion to adjourn now?
This is going to be a honeydew donut.
Motion to adjourn has been moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded, all in favor?
I thought we closed.
Thank you, everybody.